10 hobgrot slitters. Will they stand like orcs or crumble like hobnob biscuits? Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're going to be reviewing Hachette's Stormbringer issue 6 with the Age of Sigmar range. Now this issue is an interesting one because it comes with 10 hobgrot slitters, so this is quite a good value issue to get. As always, we have some interesting little bits of lore. It goes into the actual background of the Oruks, their religion and their ideology. So they're cunning and they're brutal, so they kind of embody the twin aspects of their gods, Gorka and Morka. Now this is where it can be kind of amusing because Mork and Gork is Gorka Morka, but Mork is cunning but brutal, and Gork is brutal but cunning. So it was always a kind of a fun little play of words, but these creatures always kind of embody those traits. Now, they have bronze and they have brains, but the Oruks and the hobgrot slitters, however, are a bit more cunning. They're still very brutal, but they're a bit more cunning than other orcs, so that makes them all the more dangerous. These guys, of course, are not just fellas who are armed with knives. They also use explosives. So there's one cool little mini here who has something in his mouth, like he's kind of taken the pin out of the grenade and he's thrown it. And there's one fella here, of course, who's got a hook for a hand, which probably held onto the actual grenade for a little bit too long. So it gives them unit traits, the usual stuff there. You have a fairly extensive how to build guide because you do have 10 of the minis, and it does give you some little painting tips. Now, this is an interesting thing. Loading your brush. This is a good technique for people just starting, in which you dip your brush, you pull and twist it, and you get a tiny little point that allows you for a little bit of precision. It also talks about having your wrists together, your wrists on your table, and fingers on the model. So these are actually, it's very baby steps, but you'd be surprised how many minis you would paint without doing the absolute basic things, which would improve your painting tenfold. Excuse me. You of course have here the usual how to paint guide, and it goes into kind of a shooting phase now because these figures are ones with missile weapons, and this of course is the guy with the actual pin in his mouth. You have the war scrolls. It goes into the explosion of violence, and it sets up the actual scene for the actual battle with all the minis that you've accumulated so far. So you have the war scrolls, which is all the stats. You have the Stormcast turn, Cruel Boy's turn, and the actual different phases, and of course you have the victories here at the end, and of course a little teaser of what next week's issue is and the issue again after that. So with no further ado, let's have a quick look at the minis we get. So this one I believe is the leader, but I thought he was an amazing looking mini because that is essentially just blood dripping off the actual blade. So he's also missing a hand, so I imagine that he lost it by just holding onto that little explosive a little bit too long. This was a difficult enough paint to actually get. The skin is called Hobgrot Hide, and I actually had to get it specially ordered from the UK because my local Games Workshop store unfortunately didn't stock it. So if you're a couple of issues behind and you don't have the Hobgrot Hide paint, this might be one worth tracking down because it surprised me. I thought it'd be a mainstream paint, but it was kind of hard enough to find. I used the same kind of base for these guys as I've been using for all the other ones because I like the kind of sand-blasted, sun-baked kind of terrain. But because the minis bases are so small, it doesn't do an awful amount of good. I did paint underneath the yellow and black and whatnot to try and show the lava cracks between the ground, but it didn't really do. It was a lot of extra effort that really hasn't paid off. So if you're going with a kind of a terrain piece, these minis are a little bit smaller than the others. So you could nearly just get away with, I'd say Martian Iron Crust or Martian instead of Martian Iron Earth, depending on what you want to use. Nevertheless, this is the second mini, and he is a nasty one because he's just got two blades, and one is held in a kind of a stabbing motion, and the other is kind of out, ready to attack anything and everything. You have one guy here, which of course, he's throwing the explosive. So I was wondering what these little things were when I was painting them initially. They're actually, I thought they were maces. they're actually the explosive that these figures toss. So as you can see here, he's throwing one, and it's a perfectly, beautifully captured pose by Games Workshop, in the sense that, like, whoever sculpted this did a fantastic job, and it just looks epic. You have here this guy, he is someone who bangs the drums. So one of the other interesting things I noticed about this sprue with these is that you got alternative builds. So it does say in the magazine to kind of put some of the spare pieces away, or to use them possibly as terrain or kind of battlefield detritus. But you do have alternative builds. So if you pick up 2 magazines of this for whatever reason, you might be able to build another section of Hobgrot slitters that have just different postures and ways of looking. Now this, again, like I said, is a really cool kind of, he's just sounding the drum to kind of get the boys into battle. You have another fella here who looks like he's getting ready to toss the grenade. So like they're all kind of arching back with these little grenades that they're going to lob at them. And some of them, of course, are armed with the helmets. So some of them are bareheaded and some are armed with the helmets, but it does give a kind of a nice kind of chaotic vibe to the actual Hobgrot slitters. You have another fella here. Now, he has literally pulled the pin. So you can see the pin is in his mouth, and he's about to flake this grenade, we'll say, at whatever unlucky target is slightly ahead of him. And anything that's left after, he'll follow up with his actual little dagger. So we have another one here. Again, it's most of the poses, of course, because their main function is explosives, is tossing these kind of hand grenade things. But nevertheless, every single mini is different. Every single mini has a different pose, and it looks really cool. Now, again, here, this guy could be a section leader, or, I don't know, a line officer. He's got a helmet, but he's got two blades, and it looks like he's commanding fellows to go forward. So that is, again, pretty cool. We have another version with the helmet, with the grenade back and the dagger out. So, again, just magnificent little minis. They're tiny, though. These are actually smaller than the Oruks, and they're smaller than the Stormcast Eternals. But nevertheless, they're not lacking for detail. And of course, we have this guy here, which is the Standard Bearer, which was just great fun to paint and gorgeous to actually work on. So you have, of course, what sort of, God knows what sort of monster or animal that is. You have the symbols here, which are all kind of the marked etchings of their bladed armor. So as you can see here, sometimes there between his belly and his groin, you can see the same type of armor. So it could be different etchings of who belongs to the actual section or tribes or anything like that. But nevertheless, this was a very fun paint. It took a little bit of time because I had to wait for the Oruk hide paint, or the Hobgrot hide paint. But nevertheless, quite a pleasant and quite a fun little paint. Now, in terms of my actual favorite mini, it's a bit of a toss-up. It's either between the guy showing his sword with the hook hand, or the guy with the actual banner. Now, the guy with the banner actually does stand out quite nicely, but I think Mr. Hook Hand here, with blood dripping off his actual blade, just has character. But nevertheless, an excellent issue. So that would be issue 6 of Stormbringer magazine, where you get 10 cool little Hobgrot slitters. As always, if you enjoyed these videos, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And until next time, this is Sean. Good luck, God bless, and stay safe.